Welcome to Distance Learning, brought to you by the Palm Beach County School District Office of African, African American, Latino, Holocaust, and Gender Studies. Today's lesson is about the Black Power movement and its influence on Black culture. For this lesson, you will need to access the African American History lesson plans located on the School District of Palm Beach County Google Curriculum site. Within the lesson plans, you will find the materials that correspond to this lesson. If you joined us last week, I defined Black nationalism, examined the roots of Black nationalism, and examined the role of key figures during the Black Power movement. During this lesson, we will examine the relationship between the Black Power movement and Black culture. Let's begin by activating your thinking. How do you think the Black Power movement influenced Black culture? Are you able to identify connections to the Black Power movement with Black culture today? Take a moment to reflect. There were a number of events happening in America during the time of the Black Power movement. There were inner city rebellions in Watts, New Jersey, and Michigan. The passing of prior legislation did not resolve the social and economic disparities that plagued the Black community. To add insult to injury, in 1965, the US government began increasing troops in Vietnam. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. began speaking out against the Vietnam War and organized the Poor People's Campaign, a march on Washington that would bring attention to the economic issues that affected the poor. Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, which led to more unrest and rage in the Black community. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 was passed, outlawing discrimination in housing. Black people continued to protest against oppression and racism in various ways. Yet racial tension was high. We're going to begin by looking at some of the notable protests in sports. As I stated last week, Black nationalism promotes unity, self-determination, pride, social, political, economic empowerment within Black communities. Black nationalism birthed the Black Power movement, a revolutionary movement built upon these principles. The symbol of the movement is the raised fist, which stands for unity and solidarity. Take a moment to analyze this photo. What do you see? What are the people doing in the photo? How would you describe this photo? Are there any important symbols or objects in the photo that may be significant? If so, what do they stand for? This photo was taken during the 1968 Olympics, after the medals were presented to the winners of the 200-meter race. Tommie Smith and John Carlos protested against racism and oppression in solidarity with their raised gloved fist. Smith said it was a cry for freedom and for human rights. We had to be seen because we couldn't be heard. In the lesson plans, you will be given the opportunity to analyze the photo further. Look closely at their feet and gloved hands. What role did Peter Norman play in the protests? Did they face any backlash as a result of this? Write down your analysis in your journal. Muhammad Ali won the heavyweight championship 3 times. Born Cassius Clay, he changed his name to Muhammad Ali after joining the Nation of Islam. Muhammad Ali protested against the Vietnam War. In 1967, Ali told reporters, "Why should they ask me to put on a uniform and go 10,000 miles from home and drop bombs and bullets on brown people in Vietnam after so-called Negro people in Louisville are treated like dogs and denied simple human rights?" He publicly refused induction, and as a result, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for evading the draft. He was stripped of his boxing title and license. Muhammad Ali continued to use his voice. He started touring and speaking at universities. Around 1971, the United States Supreme Court reversed his conviction, and Ali continued his career as a boxer. Ali wasn't just a boxer. He was an activist who fought against injustices that affected all people. This is why he is remembered as the greatest of all time. The Black arts movement was an artistic movement that promoted Black art by Black artists for Black people. The Black arts movement had its most significant impact in poetry and theater. The movement's influence was heavy in Harlem, Chicago, Detroit, and San Francisco. The idea of the movement was for Black people to seek liberation by producing Black art for Black people. Amari Baraka, who is known as the father of the Black arts movement, felt that it was the responsibility of the Black artists to change the image that Black people identified with. These images were from a Eurocentric perspective. The works of the Black arts movement stressed Black beauty and pride. Two well-known writers of this movement are Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin. Music was also influenced by the movement. Jazz music was a way that Black people could freely express themselves. Later on, artists such as James Brown performed "I'm Black and I'm Proud." The movement for Black studies and the transformation of college curriculums owed some of its inspiration to the Black Power and Black arts movements. Black students enrolled or Black students' enrollment in colleges and universities increased in the 1960s and 1970s. Black students who attended predominantly white institutions found themselves alienated at times. There wasn't much they could relate to or identify with. As a result, Black students demanded courses in Black history, culture, literature, and art as an alternative to the Eurocentric bias of the average university curriculum. San Francisco State College created the first Black Studies department in 1968. Students protested for change at Northwestern University and Columbia University. Yale University became one of the first universities in the United States to offer a degree in African American Studies. Harvard later created an African American Studies program. By the 1980s, several schools offered master's degrees in African American Studies. By 1988, Temple University became the first university to offer a PhD in African American Studies. under the leadership of Dr. Asante. In conclusion, the influence of the movement is embedded in Black culture. Its influence can be seen today. Art and music are still used as major platforms for activism. The roots of real hip hop music are influenced by the ideas of Black nationalism, consciousness, and knowledge of self. As Black people continue to fight against economic oppression and racial discrimination, we see the influence of the movement in various protests such as Black Lives Matter. The Black Power movement emphasized Black pride, self-determination, and empowerment. This concludes this lesson on the Black Power movement. As you reflect on today's lesson, think of 3 things you've learned, 2 things you would like to learn more about, and 1 question you still have. Thank you for listening.